back to Comic Quarantine. Now this video is dedicated to my friend Nihal Sajid, with whom I talk about this game a lot back in my school days. That's right, we're gonna talk about an episodic fascinating adventure game called The Wolf Among Us. This was an episodic graphic adventure game based on the Vertigo comic book series called Fables. It was developed by Telltale Games, and it was canon with the comic book story and was a prequel to the comics. Also, it was the game consists of 5 episodes that was released throughout. I recall playing this game back when I was in 12th grade, maybe 2014. I do remember most of the details, except a few.
For years, many of the magical lands described in myth, legend and folklore, known as the homelands, have been occupied by an enigmatic tyrant known as the Adversary. To escape the Adversary's regime, many of the homeland inhabitants, collectively known as Fables, basically like bedtime story characters, fled to colonial America and created an enclave known as Fabletown. Now, this story takes place in Fabletown, now located in the modern-day Manhattan. To mask their presence from the native humans, referred to as Mundies, which is similar to Muggles in Harry Potter. All non-human Fables have to purchase an enchantment known as Glamour, which allows them to appear human, or they have to be relocated to a rural community known as the farm. Our protagonist is Bigby Wolf, or formerly known as the Big Bad Wolf. He's from the Red Riding Hood, yeah. He is the sheriff of Fabletown, currently working at the business office under corrupt interim mayor Ichabod Crane, aided by Snow White and the magic mirror in his investigations, along with the help of Buffkin the Winged Monkey, that manages the Fabletown's records. One of the Fables that Bigby frequently contacts is Mr. Toad and his son TJ, who lives close to him. The plot mainly revolves around the unraveling murder mystery involving the characters Faith and Nerissa, who are vital to the story. The story begins with a tip from Mr. Todd that a woodsman is creating a drunken rampage in his tenement with a prostitute, who we are later introduced as Faith. Bigby is able to knock down the woodsman. It's a pretty sweet fight. Bigby talks to Faith and gets her account of the situation, but is not able to learn much, and not even her name at the moment, because Faith, like every other worker in the Pudding and Pie strip club / brothel, is restricted from speaking the truth and talks cryptically and forced out of a deadly spell. Before she departs, she thanks Bigby and tells her he is not as bad as everyone says he is. Later that night, Bigby and Snow White find a woman's head left on the woodland's doorstep. Clues left with the head identify her as Faith, a fable from the books, which Bigby had met earlier in the night. She was originally from a fable titled Donkey Skin, in which she escaped from marrying her father. It's a pretty messed up story, by using a donkey skin coat to hide her beauty, she was then married to a prince named Lawrence, who currently lives in an apartment in the Bronx. Bigby also has a choice to look at Faith through the mirror, but she doesn't appear, which is weird. There is a spell on her blocking her from the mirror saying, "These lips are sealed." Now, this scene is extremely important and comes into play during the last episode of the game. Bigby continues investigating the serial killer walking the streets of Fabletown. He also attempts to find answers from Faith's pimp, Georgie Porgy, a character from Fables, and becomes more involved with Beauty and Beast's affairs. Following a shocking revelation, Bigby pursues Ichabod Crane, who is now running away and is in hiding. Bigby must delve into the criminal underworld to find the presumed antagonist, Crooked Man. Secrets are kind of revealed toward the end of the story, and decisions are made as Bigby squares off against the Crooked Man, and also facing against his deadliest agent, Bloody Mary. Whoa, she's one hell of a nightmare character and a villain in the game, huh? And learns the full truth about Crooked Man's crime against Fabletown. The final moments of the episode are the most cryptic and the hardest to understand. Nerissa, who I said earlier, who's kind of important to the story, is a friend of Faith and will be aiding you throughout the game. Now, she will call to you from across the street and you'll have a short conversation, and she states she has to tell you something. She'll explain that Faith, Lily and her had a plan to leave the Pudding and Pie, but then Faith stole a picture of Crane and Lily together for a leverage against the Crooked Man. Now, if you recall earlier, this was the reason why Ichabod Crane was hiding. And then Nerissa goes ahead and explains that she told Georgie about the picture hoping he would help them, but instead he killed Faith in front of her and Lily instead. Therefore, when Nerissa stated at the witching well she knew for certain the Crooked Man was behind the orders for the murders, she was assuming as such, and she actually didn't have the actual proof. Nerissa was also the one who left Faith's head at the doorstep for Bigby to find. So, he could start investigating the murder and catch the Crooked Man and Georgie. Since Nerissa couldn't talk about it herself due to the curse on the ribbons that she wore around her neck, which led her to always being said, these lips are being sealed. At the end of the conversation, Nerissa says, "You're not as bad as everyone says you are," before turning to walk off. Now, this was the same thing Faith had said to Bigby at the beginning of the game, which triggers a series of verbal memories within Bigby that seem to suggest he is questioning Nerissa's true identity. Two options of going after her or letting her go are presented, which both just led to the end of the game's credits. Now, this last moment with Nerissa has given rise to a couple of possible theories to who she actually is. Number 1. Nerissa is dead and Faith is pretending to be her. The first is that Nerissa we have come to know is actually Faith, who is glamoured to look like Nerissa. Meaning that it was actually Nerissa who was killed and Faith was the one who tried to get Bigby to start investigating. Therefore, the dead body of Faith found on the doorstep would have to be the dead body of Nerissa, glamoured to look just like Faith. Much likely, Lily's body also was glamoured to look like Snow White between the game at the time of her death in an earlier episode. Number 2, Nerissa pretended to be Faith in episode 1 while Faith was already dead. So another theory is that, Nerissa is still herself but was glamoured to look like Faith at the beginning of the game to lead, Bigby to start investigating her friend's death. So therefore, Faith was already dead at the beginning of the game, and the version of Faith we saw was Nerissa with the woodsman trying to find help while still being unable to speak about the murder. Now, this theory would make a bit more sense as, Nerissa seems to willingly give away her time spent pretending to be Faith at the beginning of the game. And when she says the exact same phrase to Bigby at the end of the episode 5, which we just discussed, as she did in episode 1. So we will have to wait until season 2 to know for sure. What I loved about this game. The soundtrack by Jared Emerson Johnson's work on the score remains stellar. He creates the perfect tone and atmosphere for Bigby's often extreme actions during his investigation. The quality music keeps with the 80s era and has a detective vibe. Next would be the story itself of the game. It has a solid detective story, with some twist here and there. Each character is written really well and is captivating. And by the end of the game, you would be wanting to read the comic to know more, which I kinda did. And finally, the gameplay. This game was the first time I played a point-and-click adventure game of a kind of genre. When exploring an environment, the player may find an object they can interact with, and when this occurs, they must move a cursor over the object, so select and examine it. Items of interest are stored in an inventory and can be used later in the story while investigating. The player may also talk with non-player characters and see the conversations present in the form of dialogue trees. These dialogue options chosen during conversation would either have a positive or negative effect on how other characters view Bigby, and their perceptions would influence future events in the story according to the dialogues you'll be choosing. Some scenes are more action-oriented, forcing the player to respond to a series of quick time events prompts. The player is not required to complete every quick time event prompt, and skipping that, certain prompts may affect the future event in the story. Now let's talk about the studio that made the game, Telltale. Originally founded in 2004, Telltale Games became synonymous with storytelling and pioneering the episodic game format, and changing the way the game's medium embraced narrative. But following a string of successful and awarding winning game series based on television and film licenses, they actually have games on movies like Back to the Future, Borderlands, Guardians of the Galaxy, and much more. And the game developer and publishers shuttered in October of 2018, if I recall right, leaving fans disappointed in the wake of them being not able to create games anymore. Thankfully, this company called LCG Entertainment, which was working with them earlier, a holding company that was doing business with Telltale Games, announced that it has purchased the now defunct studio's key assets, trademarks, technology, and selected intellectual properties with the intent of re-releasing select games from the studio's back catalog, and also developing new games in some of the company's best-selling brands.
So since they have announced season 2 of The Wolf Among Us after a 5-year hiatus, which I'm highly hyped for, and I will be talking to Nihal once I finish the game. Next week, I'll be running a suggestions post or story in my Instagram at NesiLXT. So please do let me know your suggestions and recommendations. I will likely make a video on it. Thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe this video. Goodbye.